بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Du'as of afiyah and barakah for everybody joining in. Inshallah ta'ala, bi'iznillah. Hope everybody is doing well. Inshallah ta'ala, today, and please do not mind the camera not being on actually. I have a severe eye infection, and I just thought it was not a pretty sight to look at. So, hope that while you're driving or while you're while you're doing other things, this audio can play in the background. Today, we are going to be discussing uh, a book summary from our book from Eli Harwood's book. She's a creator of Attachment Nerd. I first came across her on through her Instagram account, and then I liked the things that she started putting on. And as you know, she talks about attachments, or as you don't know, but do look her up. Eli Harwood, Eliharwood, and her book, A Guided Journal. So it's a journal. I need to tell this first that it's a journal. It's not something that's just a book that you read across, but it requires you to put in effort and write things in it. So it's called Securely Attached. Transform your attachment patterns into loving, lasting relationships. Right? And why did I choose this book for today's Thursday live? One of the reasons is that on our platform, we coach a lot of parents. We come across parents, we talk about parenting. And like we know, humans are layered species, right? Including our children, including ourselves. And sometimes, in order to connect with our child, what is needed most is to know ourselves better. When a parent comes to a coach and they say, like, why is my child not understanding, why are they doing this, why, right? So the story goes back to us. The story goes back to how we comprehend things and how we think about things. So the first thing that I want to tell about the attachment is that the myth about attachment is that the something attachment is something that you have developed with your parents while you were young, and it remains the same throughout, which is a myth, because what happens to you in the first few years of life is attachment you develop for forever. That's a myth. However, the fact is, while the first few years of life are very impactful to your attachment, you can experience significant shifts in your attachment throughout your lifespan. Yani you can change. If you were not having a secure attachment with your parent, that does not mean that you cannot develop secure attachment with your child, or that does not mean that you cannot develop secure attachment with your spouse or with your siblings. It is something that you develop over time, and we will discuss how does that happen, right? The first thing to realize is that um, the attachment is an instinct. It is built in a hard drive in all of us. The way our parents handle our attachment needs, and our teachers, and sometimes our grandparents or uncles and aunts, depending who we spend more time of our life with, our early years with, who are our early caregivers, that helps develop our attachment style. So, and also another thing in this book, she does not just talk about parenting, and she does not talk, actually, she does not at all talk about parenting. She talks about childhood, the attachment styles in childhood, and then she talks about our attachment styles in our adulthood, which was really interesting to me. And early on here and on this live, I want to say that please do listen to the whole entire book summary, and I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. But this book is good because as an adult, it helps you understand your attachment style and see the patterns that you are following from your childhood up until you into your adulthood. So in childhood, she says that the childhood attachment styles, they're named differently, whereas in adulthood the attachment styles are named differently. And she says that in childhood it is called a secure attachment, in adulthood it will be called a secure autonomous, in childhood it's called a disorganized, in adulthood it's called unresolved disorganized, in childhood it's called insecure anxious avoidant, in adulthood it's called dismissive, in childhood it's called insecure anxious ambivalent, or In adulthood, it's called a preoccupied, right? And she says that through an insecure attachment, though an insecure attachment experience does mean a harder path to finding secure love, it's not a lifelong suffering sentence. In fact, there is another category in research term that is called earned secure attachment. And this was really helpful because for those of us who have had to put in work to learn secure relating skills. And one of the things in parent coaching that we do with mothers and fathers is that we help them understand how to develop secure attachment with their children. Going on to, let's just very quickly go over the attachment across developmental stages. And according to research, the attachment starts in our utero, like when we conceive our babies and the baby is developing in a mother's womb. Attachment styles, they develop from there in itself. The babies um need their caregivers to take good care of their bodies and follow the healthy requirements needed for the pregnancy to be healthy as possible. They also need their caregiver to start bonding with them through cooing, singing, and seeing them and belonging together. We all know the mothers who have been pregnant, who have gone through several pregnancies, or even one to begin with. We all know that talking to the baby, listening to the Quran, listening to good information, learning knowledgeable things is extremely important. And we do know this, that the noises and the sound, the baby does respond to it. Birth through infancy, babies need high levels of proximity, closeness to caregivers, and high responsiveness from their caregivers when they communicate either by crying or cooing. They are learning that their cries bring support, or that there is no point in crying out. In toddlerhood, these little baby, I mean, children need lots of support with their big feelings to learn what is happening in their body and how to cope with it. They also need safe, responsible, reasonable limits from caregivers to learn about safe, appropriate, and unsafe and inappropriate choices. In the preschool age, preschoolers need lots of presence and engagement with their excitement for the world. They continue to have big rushes of emotions, so need compassionate understanding and guidance from attachment figures and good examples of coping skills. In school age children are learning about relationships and world at rapid rates, so they need lots of time to ask questions and explore ideas. They also need continued emotional understanding and education about their feelings and needs as their relationship grow in complexity. In early adolescence, which we call tweens, although in Islam, basically once you hit puberty, there's it's just like adulthood. But khair, in today's times, we have divided the adulthood into so many sections that by 30 we start thinking, okay, now we are adults. But khair, in tweens and in adolescence, it's about understanding the psychological changes, the effects in the bodies, and how they see their peers, and honest education about the changes, responsibility of taking their decisions. They need parents to give them ongoing love and encouragement, but also to hand them the baton with increasing frequency, like giving them responsibility, trusting them, right? Having conversations with them, listening to them more. And in adulthood, we tend to transfer our attachment needs from our parents to our peers and most intensely to our spouses. Here we seek belonging, connection, comfort, and support in these relationships outside of our family of origin. So far, so good. It's really simple. In this book, she has laid out the information that you can basically Google anywhere, but like I said, it's a journal. So with every set of information that she gives in this book, she keeps asking us to delve into deeper questions, which will help us understand our attachment style. And if you're someone who is ready to do this kind of work, it's highly recommended. So, did you know that babies as young as 12 months of age already have an idea of whether their caregivers are capable of handling their emotional needs? The data from Mary Ainsworth's strange situation research protocol. And she tells in the book that if you want to learn about the attachment theory and about the babies and how they react and respond to their parents or the caregivers, the strange situation research, it's available online. You can go through that as well. So the research experiment goes like this: a caregiver and a baby 12 to 18 months old are put in a room with toys and a stranger. After a few minutes, the caregiver leaves the baby alone with the stranger. Then, after 3 minutes, the caregiver returns for a reunion. Then, the stranger leaves the room, and the caregiver and the baby are left alone for a few minutes. Then, the caregiver leaves the baby alone in the room for another 3 minutes. Then, the caregiver returns for a second reunion. This experiment is designed to activate a child's distress level to observe the way they use their caregiver as a source of comfort and support. And so, and after they do this experiment, then they understand what kind of attachment the baby, like between 12 to 18 months, has. If the baby has a secure attachment, they know that their caregivers will be there for them, and so they cry upon the separation. They don't want them to leave. They then seek and reach out for them upon reunion when they are where they're then easily soothed. So when the baby sees you and then the baby comes into your arms and then they stop crying, right? That is a secure attachment. The avoidant attachment babies, what they do is they already know that their caregivers cannot help them with their emotional needs. And so they feel stress in their bodies upon separation, but they do not express it outwardly and do not reach out for their caregivers at the reunions. Like they just keep playing. The ambivalent attachment babies, what they do is they cry when the caregiver leaves, and they seek them upon reunion, but they do not soothe upon the reunion and protest and show anger. The babies that keep crying, and even when they're in their mom's arms and the mom is back, and but they're still crying because they're really angry. That kind. Not necessarily it's always that kind of attachment. Sometimes the child is like, the baby is very much dysregulated and they need more time to calm down. However, if this is something that always happens, then yeah, then you would consider it as ambivalent attachment. What is a disorganized attachment in the baby? Well, some babies have caregivers who are abusive or neglectful. Their responses to distress do not have a coherent pattern. Their attachment system is confused because their caregivers are often the cause of their distress. So it was pretty simple. And if you are in your birthing years, or if you have babies around, or if you are an uncle, aunt, niece, nephew, or you are a teacher, or you run a nursery, or you're a grandparent, now you can actually identify the attachment style with the babies from 12 to 18 months, and you can understand their needs better. She talks about when a caregiver's behavior creates trauma. And to just keep it short, it's like when the caregiver is abusive, neglective, or is an addict, or does not know how to take care of themselves, or is going through mental illness. That sort of understanding is definitely, that sort of a relationship is definitely going to cause distress in the developmental stages of the child. Continuing, so far so good. I think this is pretty simple. The people who are watching, and inshallah who will be watching later, inshallah, I hope there's nothing confusing about it. She talks about this, that did you know that your body chemistry is affected by the way people relate to you? For example, if someone gives you a hug that you wanted, your brain releases oxytocin. If someone aggressively yells at you, your body releases a stress hormone. I cannot pronounce it, so I'm not going to picture it. These chemicals not only affect how you physically feel in an emotional moment, but they also affect the way your brain functions over time. Children who receive lots of love and affection and care from their early caregivers develop brains that are accustomed to being soothed. That is, they have a thicker neocortex development. Children who have lots of chaos or danger in their early relationships tend to have brains that are accustomed to alertness and anxiety or disassociation and depression, that is a larger amygdala. And putting effort into healing work also changes the brain. So our brain's ability to change over our lifetime is called neuroplasticity, right? And we know this. We've talked a lot about neuroplasticity. So I was thinking when I was reading this, I was saying that if you come from a family that is that if you come from an ethnic background where um, the caregivers are loving, but in the name of discipline, there is a lot of punishment and there's a lot of threats and there's a lot of in school, especially in school systems, right? In school systems, like I remember in our days when we used to go to school, it was almost like a death sentence every day. Not because the teachers were always bad. It's not even that. It's how the system was built up to, you do this or else you're punished. Everything came with a punishment label, like with a punishment tag. If you go between 15 to 16 degrees angle, you will be punished. If you do this, you will be punished. And it depended on the teacher's mood as well. If the teacher was dysregulated on that day and if she was not feeling it, the punishment scale would go higher. And if she was okay and she was calm and she was able to handle the stress of taking care of 20, 30, 35 kids in a classroom, then life would not be that miserable that day. And the collective punishment that the children would get in the classroom, like everybody stand up or everybody do this or everybody I so I was thinking about attachment styles and I was thinking about dysregulation and co-regulation and self-regulation, and I was saying, like, if the parent is working and the child is at school and the child is not having a very good day and the parent is also not having a very good day and the child comes home and the parent comes home and they both are dysregulated. Yes, it is difficult. It is difficult to connect with the child. It is difficult to be soothing uh, adult towards a child. And so it again, the neuroplasticity concept is really good, that if we grew up was like that, and if we had these sensors, these alarms that went off at any time somebody would have a face or somebody would yell or somebody would not be in a good responsive kind tone towards us, we as adults have the capacity and capability to help learn the soothing techniques, to calm ourselves down, the breathing techniques, so that we can self-regulate, and in that cycle we will be able to co-regulate our children. It's tough. It's not easy. It's really not easy, but understanding all of these things is helpful, because we think in black and white. We think that, oh, for example, the fathers are labeled as, oh, they're just very tough on their kids, or the mothers are labeled as, she's so stressed, she's always yelling. There's something more beyond that. As much as I keep learning human psychology from Islamic lenses, from scientific lenses, as I learn about temperaments, as I learn about attachment styles, what I understand is, like, there's no one answer to a problem, because the problem in itself has a deeper meaning towards what we are wanting or even yearning for, what our subconscious is yearning for. Okay, all of this was my understanding from reading all the books. So coming back to the book, she says that human beings are one of the few species on Earth who we can form attachment relationships with people who are not our biological parents. And this is not just in the case of foster and adoption settings. We are often given what we need in chosen family members in both childhood and adulthood. She says that she has seen many clients with deeply insecure attachment relationships at home, but with a secure internal system because of a caregiver like teacher, community member, or grandparents. This is absolutely important, and that is why a lot of research and a lot of parent psychologists who work in the parenting field and family relations field, they say that, okay, so unfortunately a child was born into a family where the parents were addicts, or the parents were not very responsible, or the parents were absent most of the child's early years, in the early years of the childhood of the child. So what happens is, if they're being taken care by grandparent, or they have a teacher in a classroom that is responsive to their emotional needs and is kind and caring, that also in itself helps the child to develop tools that are necessary for secure attachments. I once was in a teacher training session. This was about, I think, 2 years ago, And there were two teachers, and both the teachers came with a set of problem. They and actually one of them was more was more concerned about this child, and she said that this child does this, and a lot of us have a problem with this specific boy, and we are not happy with him, and I don't know, we don't know how to deal with him. And the other teacher was very quiet, and I asked her, like, what is your opinion? And she said, well, the boy is going through a lot at home. His mother is, and the boy was entering in his teens, right? He was already a teenager. He was in high school. And she said that the boy's mother is not doing well. She has been mentally ill for a long time. She is on medication. The father is always out of home. There are nannies in the home, but he comes. The first teacher, she was complaining, well, he comes to the school with one blue socks and one white socks. Well, how difficult is it to find a white socks? And then when the other teacher started speaking, the child basically, even though if he's a teen, and even though if he's 6 foot, what has happened is from early on there were signs of distress in the home, and nobody was addressing those signs because the parents themselves were unavailable, emotionally unavailable, right? Them to themselves, in fact, actually they were suffering themselves. And so the child did not develop the tools necessary to regulate, to self-regulate himself, and the frustration and the whatever is building in him. The outlet that he has is his school, is his classmates, is his teachers. And so that one teacher out of the rest of the five, that one teacher had a more compassionate, a more kind outlook towards the child. And the fact was, when I asked about the grades and when I asked about the subjects and how he was doing, the teacher who was kind, that child was actually excelling in that class. There were no there was no commotion caused in that class by that child. There was no yeah, she did not have to tell him again and over again, don't talk, sit quietly, do your work, turn in your homework, why is your test not this, blah blah blah. She has nothing. She He was doing great, and all the rest of the others, they all had complaints. So what does this tell us? This tells us that, I mean, we should make dua that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us good parents for our children, kind parents, but we should also make dua that, Ya Allah, on the schools, the teachers, the grandparents, the uncles and aunts, and the friends that our children come across, make them good and beneficial for our children, and uh, protect our children from unseen harm, and you know all of that. But it's really important. So then she says, what are secure parents like? So she says secure parents tend to trust their teens to make choices and face mistakes. The preoccupied parents tend to enmesh with their teens and try to prevent mistakes. The avoidant parents, they tend to address teen behaviors but not their feelings. And the fearful parents, they tend to take their teen choices as a personal offense and punish them harshly. And in all honesty, as a parent, I would like to say this in my defense, that if we do not understand ourselves, if we do not understand what's happening within within our fears, within our triggers, why are we saying and doing the things that we are saying and doing, and we don't reflect upon our words and upon our emotions, and we do not sit with that, we will usually fall into avoidant parents or fearful parents or preoccupied parents. The secure parents, they have to do a lot of work on themselves. And I will tell you this from my own experience. I study, I talk, I everything. And just a few weeks ago, actually on Mother's Day, my children, they had amongst themselves, they, what is it called, disagreement. They had a disagreement, and my middle child, she came to me and she said, what's the point of you discussing about parenting so much and being a parent coach when you cannot deal with your own kids? And I was like, oh my god. I said, okay. She's challenging me. And then I had like I did deal with the situation, and then after a few hours I asked, so are you satisfied with my performance as a parent? And she was like, yeah, you did good. So I just want to tell you that whether you're a parent coach or not, you are a parent and you are a coach. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He bestows this blessing of parenthood on us, we naturally are leaders to our children, and we won't always be doing 100%, of course. but to keep trying is basically the idea. So, the connection between early relationships and adult attachments. Now, this is something that we all want to hear because as wives, as mothers, as or as husbands, if husbands or men are listening, this is something that bleeds into our relationships. So, in childhood, she says that secure attachment would be that my caregivers were effective at showing up for my emotional and tender needs. They were consistent and responsive and able to soothe and support me. I learned to trust my body and my needs to relate to people with authenticity and trust. And how would that secure childhood attachment look like in our adulthood when we are husbands and when we are wives or when we are good friends? It will look like this. I feel worthy of love and believe others are worthy too. I give freely without questioning myself, and I also ask freely when I have a need. I'm able to give and receive love without internal complications. Okay. It sounds so easy, right? It sounds, yeah. If in a simplistic way, I mean, the majority marker is that you are okay to give and receive. You're okay to understand. You're okay to love. You're okay to give somebody space. So what about the childhood ambivalence, right? When you are not so secure. So they say that in childhood my caregivers were hard to predict and would sometimes be there for me but other times really drop the ball. I learned to constantly evaluate my attachment figures and to try to adapt my own needs to please them. I learned never to let my guard down. Not very trusting, right? And so how will this look in an adult person? I have been hyper vigilant for so long that I do not know how to soothe myself and let love in. Even when things are good in a relationship, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Yani, I'm waiting for something to bad to happen, right? This keeps me and my spouse on the edge and never fully able to melt into security. Like you're not fully trusting. Right? And then what about dismissiveness, right? It is that my caregivers were averse to emotions or incompetent in responding calmly to my needs. I learned not to reach for people in need and instead hide my feelings and distract myself. How does this look in adulthood? I have been ignoring my own feelings for so long that I'm not really sure what I feel. When people share their feelings, I move away through humor, dismissal, or avoidance. I struggle to stay connected emotionally with people who want to be close to me. And what about the last one? The fearful caregivers. My caregivers were scary and posed a threat to my safety emotionally and physically while I was growing up. I learned that close relationships are war zones and that I need to always be in survival focus around people trying to get close to me. And what does it look like in adulthood? I have been in survival mode for so long that I see threats in most of my interactions. I have a hard time ever trusting safety and alternate between clinging desperately to people and pushing them away harshly. This one was really important for me because this tells a lot about how we treat our spouses or feel when we are not getting the expected responses. And it especially in my case it helps me understand where my expectation is coming from, why it's coming from. Is it just a logical thing to do or is it something that is deeper in the subconscious? Is it in the development? How does that go? So Eli is famous for this thing that I'm going to now read from her book, Securely Attached. And she talks about this a lot on her Instagram page as well. On her Instagram pages, the Attachment Nerd. If you look that up, you'll find her. You can follow her. The koala bear. When someone has a secure attachment strategy, so a secure attachment strategy person, in her terms, is called a koala bear. These adults reach for their spouses when they need them and then feel calmed as a result. For example, koala feels at home in the arms of their attachment figures. The honey badger, the ambivalent preoccupied attachment strategy. This is the honey badger, right? Their instinct is to constantly scan their primary attachment figure for any possible signs of abandonment and to protest any reassurance. Like they are always testing the other person. Are you available? Are you available? Are you available? And the minute that the other person, God forbid, is not available because they're human too, then they're like, see, I knew this. And when the other person says, okay, now I'm available, they're like, why weren't you available at that point, right? Why weren't you? See, I knew you would not be. So they have trust issues. And so honey badgers are always on the hunt for more honey from their attachment figures. Then she talks about the third style, the turtle. When someone has an avoidant or dismissive attachment strategy, their instinct is to inhibit awareness of emotions both in themselves and in others. The brains and nervous systems shut down during distress. Avoidant dismissive adults retreat when they are in need and wait out the storm alone. A turtle feels most safe alone in its shell. Well, you know, those people who shut down, who say, you know, just leave me alone, let me just be. They don't want to address the issue, even if it's hanging right in their face. They would rather go to sleep. They would rather not discuss. They would, and especially, and it's not helpful for a person who is of dismissive attachment, or has that in their patterns, because if the other person is like a honey badger and you are like a turtle, it's chaotic because one is yelling, the other is just shutting down, one is getting more and more anxious because the other is not responding, and the other is getting more and more shut down because they are now going in the freeze state. It's chaos. And this one is the last one she talks about is the disorganized fearful attachment, and she calls it the teddy grizzly bear. She says that their instinct is to alternate between clinging desperately and pushing hard to scare people away. The stress and need trigger intense survival responses that can feel deeply disorienting both to them and their partners. Disorganized, unresolved adults often oscillate between I hate you, go away, to I will die without you, please don't leave. The teddy bear state makes you appear helpless and small, while the grizzly bear state makes you appear threatening and big. So they go between just these two extremes. The teddy, grizzly bear. This is the fearful attachment or the disorganized attachment. It's good to learn. It's good to learn. It's good to understand. She says that one of the most important skills involved in resolving conflicts in a person's ability is a person's ability to stay calm enough to listen to another person's experience or needs. When our body is in a defensive state, our muscles constrict and our brain shoots out more adrenaline, which makes it physically harder to use our reasoning brain to listen and come back to connection. Signs of a defense constriction state: clenched fist, clenched jaws, fast, high rate of heart, and sweating, not breathing much, feet flat on the ground, pit in the stomach. Signs of receptive relaxed state would be deep breathing, loose muscle, open hands, steady heart rate, relaxed stomach, relaxed jaw, relaxed shoulder. And I can attest to this that in situations we usually start as calm. It's not that we are aggressive from the very get-go. It's usually calm, but the threshold to stay calm, that is where the practice comes in. And I can say this from practice and from reading and listening to several people over the years, that staying calm is a practice that you need to do in calm situations so that it becomes a secondary habit and you are able to pull out that calmness in intense situations. It does not happen in intense situations, for example. And they say this, that you have to practice something for it to kick in when you are in need to pull that, right? You cannot learn defensive driving when you are in that extreme driving situation. You have to learn the tips and tricks and how to avoid an accident before you get into an accident. One important thing that she talks about in the end of the book is that people pleasing as a survival skill. If you grew up in a family where a parent or a sibling was highly reactive, or if you fell into a brutally abusive relationship later on in adulthood, you may have developed one or both of the codependent coping skills to survive, which is fawning. Fawning is when, so we know about fight, flight, and freeze mode, right? We know about those three. Fight is when you become more aggressive, Flight is when you just leave the situation, you make a whole fuss, but then you leave. You're not going to address it. You want try to run away. You try to distract yourself. Freeze is when you become really numb. The other person is yelling or things are happening around you, but you and yourself are like everything is going in slow motion in your head, and you're not able to respond or do anything about it. You're just frozen. But the fourth condition of the nervous system is, and people pleasers do this, is called fawning. And fawning is when you're overly positive, generous, and kind to other people in hopes that it will keep the target off your head. You learned that if you constantly please the toxic people from your past, that they would aim their rage at your less or not to you at less, basically. Responsibility dysmorphia is what happens as a result. After fawning as a survival instinct, you became adept to taking on other people's responsibility and believing that it was your actions that controlled their behavior and emotional responses. Your idea of responsibility is out of whack. And I talk about this, and I've started to tell myself and others also that, you know what, if somebody is being emotionally not okay, and that does not mean that they're wrong and you're right. It's not about wrong and right. People are people, and people go through a lot of stuff, and you really don't know what's happening in the other person's head or heart, and or in the chemical um, uh, reactions that are happening in their body. But one thing that I tell my children is that even when I am yelling and they get scared and they come and they say sorry to me, and I say, listen, honestly, do you believe that you did something wrong, or was I just out of line? As a human being, you do not have to apologize for somebody's bad emotional outburst. That is not adab. That is not akhlaq. That is not. I can say this as a parent. I can use my authority and I can say, you made me yell at you because I've told you this so many times and you never understand. And this is ridiculous. And how will you ever understand? But okay, fine. They don't understand. They did not respond or react appropriately to the situation. Yes. Am I supposed to get mad? Yes. As a parent, can I feel disappointed? Yes, definitely. But am I supposed to just then go off in a tone and in an expression that is demeaning to them? Akhlaq says no. Adab says no. No. Do I want to give them consequences? Do I want them to learn from their mistakes? Do I want them to understand in another way? Yes, absolutely. But I first taught myself this, and then I teach my children this. Regardless of what your relationship is, you or the other person has to stay in the boundaries of adab and akhlaq when they feel that they have been wronged. There are ways to address the situation and things that can be said in a more stern or firm way, but there is no room for putting the other person down or giving remarks that are basically character assassination. And that is something that we really need to practice so that our children understand, and they don't do this with other people or themselves, and that is not done to them as well. Another important piece of information that she gives is that, did you know that the way the people in your life mirror your emotional state affects whether you feel secure with them? So if you're sad and someone smiles at you, it is not comforting. You know, when our children are sad and we say, oh, smile, I'm smiling, oh, smile, and I understand that we want to make them happy, and that is a very natural instinct of a parent. But the thing is, give the child a few minutes and stay somber with the child. Like, don't, it's okay. So mirror their emotion, because that also gives a silent validation or an acknowledgement that I see you. I see you how you are, and I accept you in this moment, right? We long to see our emotional states reflected on the faces of people we are close to. Other people's mirror of our emotional states signals to our nervous system that they are receiving what we feel, which makes us feel less alone, which then helps our system to calm. And she says that if you go for the polyvagal theory points on online, you will understand this more. And she says that Dr. Ed Tronick, in his work through still face experiment. So still face experiment is something that she says that if you want to study that, please go online and study that. Um, It says that if you Google the still face research, grab a tissue because it is surprising how heartbreaking it is to watch a child deal with a blank face from a caregiver for only 1 minute. And this is talking about the babies and how to respond to parents who are not responsive to their needs. She says 8 traits of a secure attachment pattern. So, and we are almost, there's one more note and we are done with the book, alhamdulillah. She says number one is caring. So, 8 traits. So, number one, caring. A person with a secure attachment pattern offers emotional and practical care to the people they are close to without condition or expectation, the unconditional love kind of a thing, right? Number two, they're responsive. A person with a secure attachment pattern is available and quickly responsive to the tender and emotional needs of their people. Number three, they're receptive. A person with a secure attachment pattern is open to the emotional needs and states of the people they're close to, even in hard times. Equitable. A person with a secure attachment pattern is concerned with everyone getting what they need, including themselves, and no one being left with a disappropriate amount of labor in the relationship tasks. Equitable means like right now I'm not okay to be available to carry this load, but I hear you. And let me recuperate and I will come back, or let me find another means or something else that will help us both in this situation. I'm just giving an example of equitable. Curious. So, a person with a secure attachment pattern wants to know and learn more about the people they're close to, no matter how long they have known them. And this is where in couples therapy and in couples coaching, we talk about how do you connect with them? How do you show them that you're interested in them? What are the questions that you need to know? What are the questions you need to ask them? What are the questions that you need to regularly ask to check in with your spouses, right? Honest. A person with a secure attachment pattern is authentic and shares their true thoughts and needs with their spouses or children. Accountable. A person with a secure attachment pattern is capable of owning their mistakes and making repairs with the people they're close to. Compassionate. A person with a secure attachment pattern has a tender heart towards themselves and others. So they're caring, they're respond. So number one, they're caring. Number two, responsive. Number three, receptive. Number four, equitable. Number four, curious. No, number five, curious. Number six, honest. Number seven, accountable. Number eight, they are compassionate. Alhamdulillah. The last note from the book that I marked was mind reading is overrated. She says that if you had parents who ignored your non-verbal cues or misread them, that is, could not accurately read your mind when you were little, then you are likely to believe that your needs only matter if someone notices them without you asking. So you feel dependent on others naming your need for you, often growing crusty and bitter when they don't. Oh my God, so much wives do this all the time with their husbands. May Allah forgive us. But khair. If you had parents who read your nonverbal cues, that is, they read your mind when you were little at the appropriate stage of life to do so, you are likely to believe that your needs matter and share them as soon as you have them, instead of waiting for someone to notice them. The secure action is always to say what you need and not to wait for someone to figure it out. A secure spouse will try to meet your need, not try to figure it out before you ask. Alhamdulillah. And so these were the highlights from the book, Securely Attached. Again, one more time, it's more of a journal than a book. And so if you are interested in getting this book, just know that uh, you'll have to do a lot of work. You'll have to do a lot of writing in the book. So, Securely Attached, Transform Your Attachment Patterns into Loving, Lasting Romantic Relationships by Eli Harwood, creator of Attachment Nerd, right? She is also on Instagram. She has good information, good stuff that she posts online. I hope this was helpful to the people who are listening online live and later who will be listening. Jazakallahu khair, everybody. Please do make dua for my health. I'm not doing well. Um, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless everybody with best of health, best of iman, and ease our physical, emotional, spiritual pains. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to do what is best for our dunya and akhirah and for our loved ones. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us easy in our relationships and make our relationships easy for us, on us. Ameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to give allow us the wisdom and the humbleness and the humility and the kindness and the softness to give ourselves and our loved ones and the people who are in shared community with us, whether they're our friends or our relatives, distant and near, to be kind and generous in our words, actions, emotions with them. Good emotions, not bad, of course. I mean, Jazakallah khair, everybody. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.